The Volkswagen Beetle isn't just a car, it's a legend. In the 1970s, every Beetle that rolled off the line in Wolfsburg, Germany, was crafted with care, precision, and a lot of human hands. From flat steel sheets to a rolling humming machine, the process was both simple and extraordinary. Every Beetle started as a flat roll of steel. This steel wasn't just cut and hammered. It was pressed into panels, doors, roofs, hoods, and fenders. Critical parts, like the A-pillars, used stronger steel to make the car safe without making it heavy. Decades before crash tests were standard, Volkswagen thought ahead. There was no room for storage. Steel panels moved straight to welding. Any delay, and the steel could rust. Rusty steel wouldn't weld properly. Timing was everything. Efficiency was key. Fewer than 30 different molds were needed to stamp the Beetle's entire body. That meant faster production, lower costs, and consistency. Next came welding. But this wasn't about machines taking over. Thousands of spot welds, over 4,000 per car, held the panels together. Heat, not bolts or glue, fused everything. Workers used handheld machines, guided by experience. The side panels, roof sections, and rear quarters were positioned with great care, then clamped tightly in place before welding. Precision was everything here, because even the smallest mistake could cause big problems later. A single weld slightly out of line could mean that a door wouldn't shut properly, or that a panel would sit uneven against the body. To prevent this, workers measured again and again, adjusting clamps until the pieces fit perfectly together. In critical spots, like around the suspension mounts and the engine compartment, extra welds were added for strength. These double welds made sure the body could handle the stress and vibrations of daily driving, giving the Beetle its reputation for durability. By the time this stage was done, the shell wasn't just a collection of panels anymore. It was a strong, unified structure, ready to take on the next steps in the build. Once the shell was welded together, it officially became the body. At this stage, the bare steel frame began to look like a car, but every detail had to be perfect. Workers moved slowly along the line, running their hands over seams and joints, tapping with small tools to hear if the welds were solid. Door openings were carefully measured, and each door was tested in place to ensure it swung smoothly without sticking or sagging. The hoods, trunk lids, and other moving parts were then added, fitted with precision, so they lined up exactly with the rest of the body. Even the smallest gap mattered. Too tight, and the panel would scrape. Too loose, and it would rattle on the road. Any misalignment was fixed immediately, with adjustments made on the spot. By the end of this stage, the Beetle's iconic shape stood completely formed and symmetrical, but still dressed in bare steel, waiting for the next step. Before painting, the car went through dipping tanks. First, chemical baths removed grease, dust, and metal particles. Then a phosphate bath added a thin layer to prevent rust and help paint stick. Finally, a gray primer was applied by hand. Masks on, spray guns ready. Workers carefully coated every surface, inside and out. Hard-to-reach areas were sprayed first, followed by main panels. The primer was then baked in an oven for over 30 minutes to harden. Next came the color coat, nitrocellulose lacquer, fast-drying and glossy. Sprayed by hand, each layer required skill and precision. Every coat was baked again to lock in the shine. The Beetle's paint wasn't just decoration, it was protection. After this stage, touching up the body wasn't allowed. Every spot had to be perfect before assembly continued. The engine wasn't installed on the main body line. Beetles used a flat-4, air-cooled engine. No radiator was needed. A fan on the crankshaft cooled the cylinders. Engine assembly started with the crankcase. Pistons, crankshafts, push rods, and cylinder heads were torqued by hand. Carburetors, distributors, alternators, and fuel pumps were added to form a complete unit. The gearbox, a 4-speed manual, bolted directly to the engine. The rear suspension and axle were pre-assembled on a subframe. Once complete, the entire engine and rear axle assembly rolled under the painted body. A crane lifted the body and lowered it onto the drivetrain. Bolts secured everything. Fuel tank, battery, and connections followed. With the powertrain in place, wiring came next. Bundles of cables ran through the car controlling ignition, lights, horn, and wipers. Connections were crimped, not soldered, ensuring reliability. The dashboard, speedometer, fuel gauge, switches, and fuse box snapped into place. The windshields, rear windows, and side tracks were carefully placed into position, each one surrounded with thick rubber seals to keep the car protected from rain, wind, and dust. These seals also gave the Beetle its snug and solid feel once the glass was secured. Inside, the seats were slid neatly into their rails, locking firmly in place, while some could also fold forward to allow easy access to the rear engine compartment whenever maintenance was needed. With the interior taking shape, the final touch came with the wheels and tires. Strong steel wheels were mounted, each topped with the classic shiny hubcaps that became part of the Beetle's signature look. Workers tightened the lug nuts by hand to make sure everything was secure, and then carefully checked the alignment of the hood and doors so they opened and closed with precision. At last, the car stood complete and ready, rolling forward under its own power for the very first time. Every Beetle had to pass strict quality checks before leaving the factory. First came the water test, where powerful spray booths blasted the car with heavy streams to mimic rainstorms. Inspectors checked closely to ensure no leaks slipped through the doors, glass, or rubber seals. Next was the drive test. The car ran on rollers while mechanics tested gear shifts, listened for odd engine noises, and checked for vibrations. Brakes, panel gaps, lights, the horn, and all fluid levels were also verified with care. Only after clearing these steps was a Beetle approved for shipment. Export models were moved by rail to ports, wrapped in wax paper for protection, and carefully loaded onto cargo ships. To avoid leaks during travel, batteries were sometimes disconnected and fluids partially drained. Dealers then topped off fluids, adjusted tires, and handed over keys to new owners. In the 60s and 70s, nearly every weld, panel, and bolt was done by hand. Mistakes were corrected on the spot. Production relied on people, not machines. Today, robots handle most work. Paint booths are automated, and inspection uses cameras and software. Modern factories are faster, cleaner, and quieter, but the human touch, the soul of the line, is gone. Many 1960s Beetles still survive, but most aren't untouched. Original models with small windows, metal dashboards, and matching number engines are prized. Prices vary. Basic models around $8,000, fully restored $25,000 to $35,000. Rare sunroof or dealer convertibles up to $50,000 or more. Owning a Beetle today is about preserving the hands-on craftsmanship that made it legendary. And that's the journey of how the Volkswagen Beetle came to life in the 1970s factory. A mix of skill, hard work, and tradition that gave the world an unforgettable car. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.